On this week's episode of the Irish History Boys, we're discussing the 12th of July, the Orange Order, flags, would you believe it? And then we answer some listeners' questions. What's the best period of Irish history? Well, we cover Parnell, 1798 rebellion. To be honest with you, we spoil you. Stay tuned. 12th of July 1975, the Irish News editorial. It is too late now to wonder why men in so Irish a city as Belfast should set out each year to recall a battle in which an English king and a Dutch prince with a motley crew of mercenaries fought for the possession of the English throne. The fact that the Orange Order still flourishes so positively is merely a historical reminder of how the North's landed and industrial classes so cleverly and shamelessly exploited religious passions for the preservation of their own status, power and privilege. If there is uncertainty in the Orange mind about the political future of the six counties, it is likely to find expression in this time-worn oratory that will flow from the platform in many fields. And recent perverse views about loyalty will doubtless be examined and the truth determined.
Welcome to the Irish History Boys. With me, Cormac Moore.
And me, Tim McGarry. There's the Irish News with a rather, could you say, patronising view of the Orange Order and the 12th of July? Or could you
bemused,
say... Bemused.
Bewildered.
Bothered as well.
Bothered, yeah.
Bewitched, bothered and bewildered.
Yeah.
This is the 12th of July, 1975 this is from, so that's 50 years ago. And of course, the Orange Order was founded in 1795. The Orange Order have been with us for quite a long time, but this is the Orange March in 1975. The Irish News going, why do they do this? Good Lord, what are they about? They clear as a lack of understanding, shall we say, particularly among nationalists, about Orangeism, Orange culture, Orange heritage, Orange politics. Yeah. As a Southerner, you would share that, wouldn't you?
Well, it just doesn't appear on our radar. Like we don't have. I'm from Laois originally, and now I live in south of Dublin, and you don't come across the 12th of July ever. You obviously growing up, when Drumcree, all of the scandals over that in the mid 90s, that was very much in the forefront of TV screens. But it just isn't a part of my life. I don't have any interaction with the 12th whatsoever.
Right. Well, I have an odd relationship with the Orange Order.
Do you?
Well, not a relationship with the Orange Order, but I have a very good friend, Dr. David Hume, who I do the long and the short with, who is an Orange man and an avowed Orange man, and a very decent and good man he is too.
You had to say that, did you?
No. The reason I say that is because I first met him when I did a documentary about Ulster Scots in about 2013. And
is that how you met? Was this?
Yeah, we were doing a documentary. It's still on YouTube if you want to watch it. Tim McGarry's Ulster Scots Journey. But I genuinely
the constant plugs, huh?
Before I genuinely would go, I don't think I know an Orange man or have met an Orange man. I mean, you know me in integrated education and brought up a Catholic school and all of that. And went to university, but I didn't know very many Orange men. And David Hume, a very decent, kind, honest man. I would regard him as a friend. But this whole Orangeism is very alien to nationalists. And this whole thing in 1975, what are they on about? The Orange Order has obviously a very controversial past. They've always been involved in the unionism in a very large extent. And I think there's a dichotomy in the Orange Order, which is, are they a religious organisation, are they a cultural organisation, are they a political organisation? And the answer is depends. All three, and at very different times. In 2025, where we are today, they still make political views, obviously, but they're far more cultural and religious rather than as overtly, powerfully political as they were in the past. But just to give you one,
why do you think that is?
Well, I think Drumcree's actually neutered their power.
Yeah.
No, 100%. They
and the Killeen and the Quinn boys.
Absolutely. And Drumcree, told them that they couldn't march wherever they wanted, whenever they wanted.
The Queen's Highway.
Northern Ireland has changed. But to go back, my late father, God rest him, died in 1991. But the only thing, he was never a Republican. He was a sort of soft nationalist. He said the only thing that could ever make him support the IRA were speeches from the field on the 12th of July, because they were designed to, that was the worst and most extreme of unionism and loyalism and, the sabre rattling and, the extremes of sectarianism were on view on the 12th of July.
It's funny you say that because what your dad taught, but actually it was Edward Carson's speech and Finnehy at 12th of July 1920 that was seen by many, and even a lot of British press said he went too far. Because that kind of spread the fire, that kind of started all that sectarian violence that erupted for 2 years. There was waves of violence for 2 years, and it pretty much started when Carson at his 12th July speech in Finney says, the Fenians are invading our territory, but we're going to stop them. We're going to, we know Sinn Féiner is here. Sinn Féin will be struck from outside the north, and after that there was a huge. I literally, after the 12th of July, most Catholics were kicked out of the shipyards and other places of work, like about 10,000 Catholics, and off the back of the 12th of July, and particularly from Carson's speech.
And Orange Order marches have always been controversial over the centuries, not just,
Well, they are triumphalist.
Well, yeah. Well, they're celebrating. They would say, from their perspective, they say they're celebrating civil and religious liberty for all, and which I've done.
But do many people think that? Do they? Like even the ones celebrating that. Like I know, like they could argue that
the Glorious Revolution,
King William brought in parliamentary democracy and all of that, but. I don't really think that's is front.
Well, there wouldn't be many Catholics and nationalists who would agree with that view. And of course, the Orange Order was formed in 1795 as a result of sectarian battles which were happening in Armagh at the time. And there was the Battle of the Diamond in just outside Loughgall, I think it was, where between 20 and 30 Catholics were killed in this battle between the People Day boys and I think it was the White boys or the ribbon defenders.
Yeah.
So this is it emerged from this, the sectarian strife in Armagh. And the Orange Order, it's still very controversial today. I know a few Orange men, I know several Orange men like and respect them. But the controversy still remained. The Orange Order has always been allied with the extreme end of unionism and sectarianism.
And obviously, it is open to pretty much only Protestants.
Well, no, I mean, I'm a member of Simaliki's old boys, it's only open to ex-Simaliki's boys, so I don't buy that. They're a sectarian organisation. They are sectarian in the sense they would say they're a Protestant religious organisation. So if you're not a Protestant, no, you can't join. No, that's fair enough. I don't mind that bit. But it's the overt sectarianism and the
anti-Catholicism, which have come from a lot of speeches, a lot of platforms.
Yeah, and
obviously on bonfires and the songs and in the tunes. So like there's a long list. There is a long list of anti-Catholic, Free State Republican views within Orangism,
and they were the backbone of unionism during the Ulster crisis.
And all of the Ulster cabinet. The Northern Ireland cabinet for years, all of them were members of the Orange Order. All of them. So they're intrinsically linked with the Ulster Unionist Party.
Is Mike Nesbitt the first leader of the Ulster Unionist Party not to be a member of the Orange Order? I think I'm right there. I'm pretty sure I'm right there. But it's interesting that the Irish News alludes to this and says, that they were able to. In fact, the Orange Order still flourishes. An historical reminder of how the North landed in industrial classes so cleverly and shamelessly exploited religious passions for preservation of their own status, power, and privilege. But the Orange Order does encapsulate all classes, and the anti-Home Rule movement of 1912, whether you like it or not, embodied absolutely everybody.
Well, that was one thing that
and the Orange Order
unions did very well.
Yes, they do.
They were able to bring the upper classes and working class together and kind of unified under this threat of Home Rule, and they've been quite good at that over ever since, basically, of being able to rally working class to kind of constitutional issues as opposed to bread and butter issues, which people from the labour movement will go, look, you're forgetting about what's important to your daily lives here, and you're being led astray by those in power in the ascendancy. And the Orange Order speeches from the field on the 12th of July were kind of a nod and a wink to unionists. This is what we think, and this is if you want to get elected again, you better agree with what we're saying at the field on the 12th of July. And they obliged. Pretty much.
But I mean, if you speak to Orange men today, and I've been to the Museum of Orange Heritage, I would recommend. Have you ever been?
No, I've never been. No, I've heard it's quite good.
Genuinely recommend a visit there, and they.
I think you were there for one of the long and short of episodes.
I've been there a few times for various bits and pieces, and they're very friendly, very open, and they celebrate the Battle of the Boyne 1690. You and I would say an Orange March is pure sectarian triumphalism. They say no. This is about civil and religious liberty. This is about removing the unpopular James II, who was going to become a dictator, and bringing about what we know now as effectively parliamentary democracy, because King William, when he arrived, had to basically kowtow out the Parliament, had to cede some powers to Parliament, and also King William himself, they would say, was not sectarian. King William himself, when he won the Williamite Wars, the Treaty of Limerick, was going to give civil and religious liberties to Catholics, but it was the Protestant Parliament in Ireland that didn't want to cede those. Who introduced the penal laws. It wasn't King William, it wasn't King Billy who introduced those laws.
And the Pope obviously was a...
Pope was a fan. Because of European politics at the time and about the Pope not getting on with the French. How could you not get on with the French?
A rude French person. Well, I never. So look, there is that argument, of course, but I think it's. I just don't believe that's a front and centre with most Orange people's view of how they see the Orange Order. I mean, maybe I could be misreading that completely, and I must acknowledge that I don't know any Orange person. I've met David a couple of times through your show, long and short of it, but I don't know.
Well, you need to meet a few more, because you're a United Irelander and you want to persuade these people to join you in United Ireland. We're going to have a 12th and pass the GPO on the 12th of July. And
you think
United
so?
Ireland.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And wrap yourself in the orange sash.
Have the field, make Phoenix Park the field. Come on.
Well, look, everything be up for debate in that melting pot, And,
everything's up for debate. That's not a chance. Never in a million years. Is that what you're saying?
Let's talk about the flag and emblems. Perhaps an orange march down O'Connell Street is.
The Irish News in 1975 calls the 12th absurd and irrelevant. And it's still not irrelevant, though, is it, the Orange Order? I mean, it's becoming slightly less relevant. Their power has been substantially neutered. We're becoming a far more secular society, so they're not attracting as many members because it is.
What are the members now? Like you hear it's like young people aren't getting involved as they would have been before.
Well, I mean, they are an overtly Christian organisation that's losing its power to attract young people, but they still like to go out and march and have a day out on the 12th of July, and there's not much overt Christianity to be seen during the 12th of July marches.
Quite opposite, perhaps, in some occasions.
There's an excess of alcohol. Like a lot of celebrations, like St. Paddy's Day and all of that, but it's a Protestant St. Paddy's Day.
And bonfires. What do you make of the bonfires?
Well, I'm not a fan.
Are you not a fan? Okay.
Not a fan. I have to say, Protestant bonfires are better than Catholic bonfires because Catholics are no good at bonfires. They're wick. Protestant bonfires, they put in the effort.
Well, and if a couple of people have died with the effort building those bonfires.
Some of them are civil engineering feats. Some of them
are massive construction. Absolutely.
I mean, they do cause a lot of mess and
and are dangerous.
And they're magnets for anti.
And there was I think there was two reasons for the actual bonfire nights. That was to celebrate the victory in Battle of Boyne, but also to clear a path for King William's kind of move from Carrickfergus to the Battle of Boyne. And
there were these beacons,
beacons,
and then they were lit in celebration of great victories. But I mean, you're an historian. You know the Battle of the Boyne. Its relevance down south is less significant, shall we say?
It's. Well, I remember Bertie Hearn met Ian Paisley at the Battle of the Boyne site, didn't he?
Which is another very good museum and recommend, by the way.
I've been there. It's very good. I remember. Didn't he? I think he gave him a sword or a musket.
He gave him a musket that you can see in the Museum of Orange Heritage. It's a musket from the Williamite Wars.
And this is a time when DUP were about to go into government with Sinn Féin. Which was that was a very historic moment. That a lot of people would not have seen. 8 years previously. So that was very very but the Battle of Boyne isn't. I remember being taught in school. It's obviously a key part of history. That whole 17th century was a brutal century for Ireland. Like countless thousands of people died, whether it's through the Cromwell Wars or through the kind of the glorious revolutionary years. But obviously it doesn't come into normal day talk. I mean, unless you're living in the border areas, and I know there are some orange marches are in Donegal and still, but like the furthest out you go, you just don't see them. Like as I said, the only time you hear about the 12th is when it's on TV, essentially.
And it's usually not good news.
It's usually not good news,
Unless it's accompanied by the phrase "passed off peacefully."
For once it passed off peacefully. But I remember Drumcree, that was just horrific, and like the young Quinn lads, like, you know, what happened there was shocking, you know, and that whole period was really ugly, like, I must say, you know. So.
Yeah, well, we did another series about the Troubles called Pop Goes Northern Ireland. It was the history of the Troubles, archive footage of the Troubles. And 1970 was quite important because 1969, first year of the Troubles, everybody regards that, but it kind of calmed down a bit in late 69, early 70, until July 12th. And the 12th marches were tinderbox, and they became the focus of riots, and then guns come out, and then the whole thing 1970 could have been a year everything could have calmed down until that particular period in July. And even now today people go, well, July, you know what's happening, flags go up, bonfires go up, tensions rise. It's a lot less than it was in 2025. A lot fewer people are, you know.
Yeah, and you said like the power that Orange Order has is obviously a lot more muted now.
They can't march where they're not wanted anymore.
Yeah, but there still are some contentious marches, though.
There are still,
But obviously, the Parades Commission deliberates and makes decisions. But yeah, it definitely has a lot of the heat has gone out of what it was like in the 90s, of course, you know. So which is a good thing.
Which is a very good thing, you know. And you don't even have to go to your caravan in Bundoran these days if you want to on the 12th, which is.
But can I ask you, what would you have done during the 12th, like normally?
We would go on holiday. Well, we had a family. My grandfather bought a house in Newcastle, so all the McGarry families went to
Newcastle. But Newcastle would have been. Would Newcastle not have orange marches?
Very rarely. Occasionally they go around different towns, but very rarely.
Newcastle used to be a mainly Protestant town, wasn't it? Majority Protestant. Definitely at the time of Boundary Commission, as an area I know quite well. You know, Newcastle was a majority Protestant town.
Was it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
But not by the time you were growing up.
To be honest, I'm not sure the demographics now of Newcastle. I'd have thought it'd be 50-50, maybe something like that.
Maybe it is, yeah. But
which caravan site you go to?
But there were some orange marches around, but not visible from where you were staying.
No, just get out of Belfast, for the 12th of July, and that was always the way, even up until now, even. But I must speak to David Hume. He said I should go down to the country where there's lots less tension.
At the marches?
Yeah, there's a lot less tension, and they are kind of celebratory events. You know, it's not just, it's not just apocryphal that, you know, the Catholic farmers will look after your cattle while you go off the march and all that. They say that does happen down the country, and it's a lot more cooperative. You know.
I remember watching Brian Driscoll's documentary on, I think it was BT, on All Ireland Rugby, and I just wanted to get a sense of the kind of, you know, just that divide, the political divide, and how it coalesces, you know, an All Ireland Rugby team where you would have unionists and, you know, nationalists perhaps playing rugby as well. And he actually was invited to participate in a 12th March, and he found it very intriguing. He didn't know what was going to happen. It was all very new to him as well, growing up in Dublin, and he definitely looked a bit, I wouldn't say scared, but he definitely looked a bit tense at times. I think, you know, he was out of his comfort zone. Definitely, it was a very new experience.
Well, I did long and the short of it about the Siege of Derry.
Yeah,
was in the Apprentice Boys, the Burning of London. And I have to say the atmosphere was great.
The pageantry looks good. It looks like a fascinating festival. You know, the way it's done, the way even, you know, the Burning of London and all of that. Like, you know, it's impressive visual looking festival, at least.
And if you talk to Orangemen, they'll say we're a religious organisation, also a charitable organisation, and they raise money for all good causes and things like that. But there's no doubt that their political opinions and their overview is never going to make them an organisation that is, you know, going to be loved and liked by Catholics or nationalists in any shape or form. And
often, as you said, the platform speeches in the field are often just appealing to their audience, and it's very racy language used, you know, very divisive language used.
Yes.
As the Irish News has alluded to, I think 1975 as well. You know,
There was one, it's actually from last week's episode, but there's speeches in the field in the 12th in 1925, where a certain Orange man was talking about the Boundary Commission and telling people not to worry, everything's going to be all right. They're only going to tinker with the border, don't you be worrying. Which implies to me that they had more worried about what was going to happen than...
they had an inside man on the job. Who was telling them, it's all going well. We might get rid of some of the Afghanistan parts of South Armagh.
The Afghanistan parts?
That's what Joseph R. Fisher said,
Right.
So it actually was going smoothly. So their paranoia and the kind of siege mentality had lifted pretty much from 25. Yeah, so actually the 12th marches and speeches 25 were warned as controversial. They were, I think, unionism felt in a good place that the fear of the Boundary Commission had receded, so they were a lot less kind of.
So oranges,
volatile.
And flags and marches and bonfires, particularly flags, because there's another story in the Irish News, July the 8th, 1975, threat over a vanguard flag at Grundig. Grundig, which was a fairly major employer in Northern Ireland at the time, and
are they still around? Are they? Like, I know, do TVs, isn't they?
Yeah, TV. I don't know if they're still around.
I haven't seen a Grundig TV. I remember growing up, you'd always see Grundig products.
Dr. Wolfgang Raab, the boss of Grundig in Northern Ireland, revealed yesterday that he'd been threatened that something would happen to him or his family if a vanguard flag flying over the firm's Derryahy plant was removed. Catholic workers walked out on Monday in a demonstration of protest against the display of the flag as part of loyalist workers' coat trailing for the 12th of July. So this used to be the norm in a lot of Protestant-dominated firms, that basically bunting would go up and flags would go up basically from early June till whenever. So there'd be flags and Union Jacks and ever. And I think the Catholic workers took exception particularly to the Vanguard flag, because the Vanguard were on the extreme unionist side. That was Bill Craig.
Until the convention.
Until the convention of 1970.
Which was actually sitting at that time.
But Mr. Raab, I think, did they eventually remove the flag? I'm pretty sure they did remove the flag. It was...
Well, he certainly wanted, because there had been the previous managing director had been kidnapped.
And murdered by the IRA.
Right, murdered.
Niedermeyer.
Yeah. And his
Niedermeyer,
body wasn't
awful
found.
Story, a horrible story.
His body wasn't found until the 80s or something, wasn't it? It was in a kind of a construction place, and his head was straight down in the water.
Yeah, that was the IRA, a horrible story. This was this is the successor then having to worry about.
I presume it's his successor, because it's literally about a year after.
Yeah.
So
so flags and it was big issue.
Flags a big issue in the north.
Yeah,
well, I
never.
never.
Guess. But I've talked in a previous episode about being in the Fair Employment Commission, which started in 1990. There was the Fair Employment Act of 1975. It was fairly weak. The Fair Employment Commission was far stronger in these things, and went out to a lot of these bigger companies and said, you need to start removing bunting and making it an atmosphere that is open and equal for everybody.
They
met a lot of resistance even in the early 90s, but nowadays you might have a Union Jack over certain companies, but that would be about it. Nowadays the days of putting up orange arches and having mini marches around the factory floor are long gone.
There was mini marches around factory floors.
Yeah.
The workers would march and the factory floor. Yeah. I remember speaking to your colleague Michael, the Hole and Wall gang, about when you started kind of doing your Give 'em a Headpiece comedy shows. You used to walk up and down the audience.
We
go
did
through the Queen's Highway.
We used to come from the back of the theatre, march halfway through down the aisle, and then get people up out of their seats and march across the seats, claiming it was our traditional route to the stage. Very funny, 30 years ago.
I think it's still as funny, no?
So that's the poor old orange order. You're not a fan.
I don't know enough about them, but on the. Looking from the outside, it doesn't offer me much appeal.
It doesn't offer you much.
No, it just doesn't.
It doesn't offer much appeal to a man from Laois.
A man from Laois does not find much appeal in the Orange Order, and it does come across as triumphalist, and it does come across as sectarian. Right. And I think there's enough evidence to suggest that it is both. So
right, okay. Well, look, listeners, viewers, if you want to get in touch at any time with the Irish History Boys, send us an email or WhatsApp. If you have any questions, you can WhatsApp us or send a voice note to 07483 313 842, or drop us an email at irishhistoryboys@gmail.com. The Irish History Boys is coming to Féile 25 for a live discussion and audience Q&A on Wednesday the 6th of August at St Mary's University, hosted by our friend Jim Fitzpatrick. Jim wrote this bit, by the way, our friend Jim Fitzpatrick. It's a chance to see us live and in the flesh. I mean, who doesn't want to see me and Cormac Moore in the flesh? What a treat. For details, visit our social pages and click the link below, and we will see you there, live at Féile, Wednesday the 6th of August. And we do have some questions from
Fionn O'Rourke. What do you think is the best or most important period in Irish history? That's two questions, really.
That's
isn't
two
it?
questions. The best and the most important. Are they the same things?
No,
The best?
not necessarily. No, not necessarily.
The best period in Irish history is today because we're still alive. So we're living through it.
We're living. Well, we are living in interesting times.
We are living in interesting times.
Not necessarily from an Irish history perspective, but world history anyway. We are.
Most important period, presumably the one you're studying.
Well, I'm particularly interested in the partition of Ireland. I think that's I've saved a whole revolutionary decade, which I would specialise in. The partition is the most consequential. Absolutely, that's the one that's still with us today, and it's still the most relevant to today. Even though it often didn't get the same amount of attention as events like the Easter Rising or the War of Independence and so on.
Right.
Yeah, to me, the partition of Ireland is the most current of modern Irish history anyway. And I am a modern Irish historian, so that's the area of interest for me. Like mostly, I find Parnell very interesting as a figure. I'm fascinated
even
with
if
Parnell.
you pronounce his name wrongly.
I pronounced him the way he wanted me to be
Parnell.
pronounced. He hated being called Parnell.
Did he?
Oh, he hated the emphasis on
How
the
did you know that? Did you speak to
Because
him?
he wrote about it and he commented on it.
He was Parnell.
And he hated the colour green.
Is that right?
For one of them, the uncrowned king of Ireland. That's very unfortunate, isn't it? That he didn't like the word green or the colour green.
I'm a big fan of Parnell. I'm going to just
good. You're getting the name right.
Pander to you, Parnell. Big fan of Parnell. Been to Avondale.
I live very close to Avondale. Have you been to the new walkway? There's a new walkway.
No,
it's very interesting.
He was a very interesting character
and a bit of an enigma, but he was able to kind of marry all of Fenians and Constitution nationalists.
For those who don't know who Charles Stewart Parnell is.
Parnell. Let's go to Parnell Square in Dublin.
It was a quick summary of who Charles Stewart Parnell is.
He was the leader of the Irish Parliamentary Party, and he basically he held the balance of power in Westminster
and tried to get the first Home Rule Act through.
First Home Rule Act, yeah. So hugely significant figure, and he even his obstructionist tactics, the way the Irish Party used the whip system. They were pretty much the first party to use the whip system. That did all vote together, and certain pieces of legislation. And,
he invented filibustering, did he?
He was very much because he could speak for hours and hours and hours and hours to obstruct legislation. So filibustering essentially, and his colleagues as well did it as an obstructionist tactic.
Was it Joseph Bigger?
Joseph Bigger
spoke for 23 hours or something.
I think he had a record.
So this is a tactic by the Irish Nationalist Party, basically to say we're going to screw up your entire British Parliament unless you
address our issues
of Home Rule. And the Liberals eventually said, okay, we'll
I think Gladstone was on his journey anyway, and I think he recognised that there should be Home Rule for Ireland. Kind of obviously, he was definitely influenced by Parnell, but he reached that conclusion probably by himself to some degree. But apparently he's just a fascinating character, and even his whole love affair with Catchnush, not Kitty. She was never called Kitty.
Kitty's an insult, isn't it?
Completely, Kitty, and that was a love. They were married without being married. Had children together. They her marriage with William O'Shea wasn't really a marriage, So it was very tragic how he fell down, and his downfall was very tragic, and he died very young. He died
of 41 or something.
46, I think it was. Yeah, he was.
And he was. I mean, again,
45 or 46.
A Protestant landowner from County Wicklow becomes the head of Irish nationalism. But some people would argue that period as well. That was the first time Ulster Unionists got together, wasn't it? To resist Home Rule in any shape or form.
And people like Paul Bew have argued that maybe Parnell didn't see the dangers within Ulster Unionism, didn't try to recognise it or reconcile Ulster Unionists, and that probably had repercussions later on. That because he didn't reach out to Ulster Unionists at the time, that caused a lot of the turmoil afterwards.
Despite being a Protestant himself. Well, see, this is what David Hume would say. I'm going to go back to the Orange Order. He would say that nationalist republics, particularly in the South, don't understand unionist psyche.
Well, that's definitely true. I think like Southern nationalists and Sinn Féin. Like I've written about this a lot. Is that when Sinn Féin became the leading nationalist party, it didn't have many people from the north that were in particularly in leadership roles.
Yeah.
I just never understood the Ulster Unionist psyche, and that's probably true of a lot of people, whether Protestant or nationalists from the south, that they just didn't understand the Ulster Unionist psyche, and that caused a lot of problems.
Yeah.
And they're never able to deal with the Ulster Unionist problem effectively. Now, Ulster Unionists were difficult to deal with. Best of times.
How dare you?
How dare you say that? But
what makes you think that?
But no, this is a hunch. It wasn't helped by the lack of knowledge and the ignorance of how to deal with Ulster Unionists from so many quarters within nationalism. It was only people like Joe Devlin who was in West Belfast himself, who was competing electorally against Ulster Unionists all his career.
Yeah.
He was one of the only few people who actually had an idea, a sense of where Ulster Unionists were thinking, but he had been sidelined from national politics from 1918. So, but then he made mistakes. Well, he said no matter how much we concede, all we seem to do is annoy our people and get nothing in return. Yeah. So, what if you do know the Ulster Union psyche, what does that mean? Does that mean you're going to get concessions from them? Yeah. Not necessarily, So it's but people have argued that Parnell didn't reach out enough to
so Fiona, you were saying we like Parnell, and Parnell, of course, is the reason why we're here, because the Irish News was set up as the anti-Parnell newspaper.
But this is an Irish news podcast now.
1891. It is an Irish news podcast, but our very good friends at the Irish News.
Very good friends at Irish News.
Because there was a split. The affair with Catherine O'Shea became a massive scandal.
Oh yeah, because it was
split the Irish National Party.
It was a huge issue in Victorian Britain and Ireland, and it like the Catholic Church were totally against him. The GA supported him. Like, there was a very famous scene for his funeral, massive funeral, to Glasnevin Cemetery, and a lot of GA members with Hurley's kind of procession, clad procession for him. But yeah, loads of people took their advice and leanings from what the Catholic Church said. So he was gone then, So
there was a split in Irish nationalism.
Yeah. The Parnell split lasted for 10 years until John Redmond kind of healed it under one party. But it was a brutal split.
A brutal split. Yeah. Harry Smith says, we like Harry. Harry Smith says, "Hiya lads, hope you're well."
Great, thanks.
I'm great, Harry. Thank you very much. How are you, Cormac? You all right?
I'm great, thanks.
Jesus, great. As someone who grew up as an unholy mixed person, who now strongly identifies with Irishness and Irish nationalism, I would like to know when Unionists stopped identifying as Irish. As far as I can tell, even though the signing of the Ulster Covenant and up until the Troubles, Unionists had no issue with identifying as Irishmen. All the best, lads. Best of luck with the podcast. Thank you very much, Harry. When did Unionists stop identifying as Irish? That's an interesting question because...
But I presume still many unions do identify as Irish in some respects. So.
In some respects, they do. I mean, even me and Paisley would say he was an Ulster man, but he was always an Irishman.
Yeah. And even like sporting wise, if you follow rugby or cricket or they're all Ireland. Like you support the All Ireland team. So there is some culture. You can't get away when you live on the island of Ireland. Whether you live in a state that is Irish is another question.
Yes.
But can't escape that you live in Ireland. But definitely the whole thing of Irish is like...
But there's Graham Reid, the playwright who wrote the Billy Plays. The famous line in the Billy Plays where there's a kid who's asked, about religion, and comes says, is he Irish? Or he says, no, we're not Irish, we're Protestant. Which is, it was a kind of a joke, but it's same with that whole thing about, being less Irish. That post-partition, and particularly in many unionists, your Jamie Brysons and stuff would eschew any Irish culture, any Irish identity whatsoever, and go, we're British and we're Ulster and we've nothing to do with the island of Ireland.
But like if you look at, say, Ulster Unionist Convention of 1890s, 1893, I think, when the second Home Rule bill was being debated, there was Éireann go Bragh, a big band, great image of that, Éireann go Bragh outside the Ulster Unionist Convention.
Means Ireland forever.
Ireland forever. And but that had gone to kind of the use of the Irish language and had definitely gone by the third Home Rule crisis in 1910 onwards.
Yeah.
And there definitely was a move from Ulster Unionists to identify more as Ulster or British and less so as Irish. And that's obviously... And then Northern Ireland was created and... So there was this issue, so it's not Ulster, but everyone still called it Ulster, even though obviously there's 3 counties of Ulster that were in the Free State. So there always was this dilemma. But even in the 30s, the cabinet met and were considering changing the name of the polity, of Northern Ireland, change it to Ulster. But they decided against because it was impractical, but also tourism-wise, and also products like Irish products were considered, particularly dairy products, eggs, and so on, were considered really good selling point.
Yeah.
So it was good to keep the name Northern Ireland, so it could be identified in
as
Irish products like meat and dairy and so on. So that debate was going on. That it was good to keep some of the Irish element to them where it suits them, say from tourism or certain food products, but otherwise, eschew it. And so it's a very difficult question to answer, because there are still some unions will say, but look, I'm a unionist, I'm British, but I'm also Irish. Yeah. There still are some people who would say that. So.
And you can be, because it's Good Friday Agreement. You can be British and Irish at the same time, or British or Irish or British.
Well, everyone's got Irish passport now.
But the Ulster Scots movement here, they would say that Ulster's always been separate from the rest of the island. So there was a separateness because of the influence of Scotland here. But
even some people in this, few years after Northern Ireland was created, like Heslinga and even Evans, like these geographers and historians, were saying actually Ulster's more connected with Scotland, geographically and historically, and the south is more connected with England, Wales, and so on. I don't buy that myself, but that was a lot of theories that were going around in the 20s through the 30s, 40s, 50s, that actually there's a lot more connection between Ulster and Scotland. But then what about Donegal? Donegal is Ulster too, and
Donegal still has a big connection with Scotland.
Exactly. You could say, so what does that mean? And then, so how can you say the 6 counties is a perfect geographic unit?
Not the 6 counties, I mean the province of Ulster.
No, but they weren't talking about the province of Ulster. They were talking about the 6 counties, as in being separate.
Well,
it was a natural kind of boundary, really, considering history and geography going back centuries and centuries.
Right.
This was some of the arguments used at the time. So
right.
So that's where the whole Ulster Scots thing became more prominent,
Yes, I remember some stuff talk about the Ulster Scots, and the Irish came from the Cruithin, the ancient tribes came from Scotland and all that. I know there was much to that, but there was an attempt to make this a separate Ulster identity, but Ulster, nationalists would argue, it's just an artificial creation on the island of Ireland.
But this was to counter that argument. This is an artificial creation. It's saying, actually, no, it's
always been there.
It's steeped in kind of geography and history, that this divide within Ireland, and the connection within Scotland in particular. So, look, it's a difficult question to answer, because I still think a lot of unions would say that they are Irish still. Maybe it's not as prevalent as it used to be. But there definitely was a move away from the Irishness around the time of the Third Home Rule crisis, particularly of Irish cultural issues like language and the Gaelic games were never really embraced by unionists, but certainly the Irish language became a lot less tolerant by unionists from around 1910 onwards, and they definitely
because a lot of IRA and even before that IR.
It was different. It was the Home Rule crisis. It was to show that we are a British Empire.
But the Gaelic League was certainly part of the nationalist movement, the wider nationalist movement. It was used as a vehicle by nationalists to push.
It was used, but not like Douglas Hyde was the Protestant first president. He didn't want it as a political vehicle, but it did become one. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So the language was used as a political vehicle, which is the argument that unionists make today, that it's, even today it's used as a political vehicle.
But it was used by some as a political vehicle, but others it was used to to increase the levels spoken of the native language. So of course some people would say that it's used as a political vehicle today, but others would go, look, it's an ancient great language. It should be taught and spoken more.
But we think Harry's right up until more. He says the signing of the Covenant. You think up until the 1890s, being Irish and unionist wasn't the problem. Identifying as Irish. Carson would have identified himself.
Yeah, he was an Irish unionist, and even Craig would have said.
In fact, his connections with Ulster are very loose.
They were minimal. He was only in Ulster, I think, a couple of times before he actually became the leader of Ulster Unionism. And then he certainly made up for lost time then. So he definitely identified with Ulster more so after that. But he went to Trinity College. He was home taught for primary school. Went to Laois for secondary school.
He went to Laois, your county.
Yeah, Arlington School in Port Arlington. Yeah, he went to Laois in secondary school.
Your fault then.
That's what drove him towards Ulster Unionism and to the partition of Ireland. And then he went to Trinity College, where a fellow student was Oscar Wilde.
Oh, I know it well. Yeah.
And who he then their friendship,
ended up defending Lord Queensberry and destroying Oscar Wilde in 1895 in the famous trial.
Yeah. But yeah, look, it's a complicated issue because many unions have identified themselves as well as Irish, but it's not their primary identification marker would be British and or Ulster as opposed to Irish, and that definitely seems to have increased over time.
Yes, there's an animosity to anything Irish. It seems to be diluting your unionism, and then there are other unionists going, no, why can we not be comfortable speaking Irish if we want to? Linda.
So it is complicated, Does Linda Irvine...
It's almost like politics and identity are wrapped up in each other.
Who would have thought?
Will we answer one more question? This is a complicated question. What do we like for time, guys? Are we all right for time? Yep. We'll answer one more question because it's kind of related, and it brings up another big topic, which is about, what's your favourite bit of Irish history and all that. It's from Michael Patrick, a recent immigrant to the Causeway Coast. I've read that many Presbyterians were executed after 1798 Wolfe Rebellion. How did that coalition turn into what we have now? Can't see Reverend Ian Paisley Sr. on those barricades. All the best. Thanks for interesting pod. Regards, Patrick. Open brackets, have my neighbours to consider. Don't worry about your neighbours, Patrick. Your neighbours are fine. Listen to the podcast. They'll really enjoy it. He's basically saying what happened to the Presbyterians who were radical Presbyterians of the 1790s who formed the United Irishmen, had the 1798 rebellion. Particularly in Ulster, there were, radicals like Henry McCracken and various people like that. And
Drennan.
William Drennan. Some people say that's been exaggerated, the role of Presbyterians, and that a lot of Presbyterians were against the United Irishmen.
But that would be my understanding. And look, obviously, some Presbyterians had leadership roles, so maybe that was led to people believing that all Presbyterians were in favour of the United Irishmen. But I think it wasn't necessarily against British rule. From my understanding, is because it would be an area that I'm an expert on, any stretch of imagination. But my understanding.
Talk to me. I have an A level in that theory.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, it's okay.
You have an A level. Do you? I've heard that before. Haven't I? Definitely heard that before. But my understanding was that their issue was more the Protestant ascendancy at the Church of Ireland, who basically Henry Grattan's Parliament, they were in the ascendancy. So when you have the established church, in Ireland at the time, it was the Church of Ireland.
Yes.
So Presbyterians, although not discriminated as much as Catholics were, they still were discriminated.
Yes, they discovered
less opportunity.
They suffered under the penal laws. Their marriages weren't recognised and weren't allowed certain jobs. It wasn't as bad as Catholics, but there were penal laws that Presbyterians endured. But then Wolfe Tone was Church of Ireland, I think, and he argued for total emancipation of Catholics and everybody else.
Of course,
That with them was refused, and then they went from a reform organisation. United Irishmen went from a reform organisation to a revolutionary organisation, saying the Brits are the fault, the cause of all our problems, and tried to bring this notion of Catholic, Protestant and dissenter together. Now, dissenters, some people think, dissenters, that means you're neither Catholic nor Protestant, but of course dissenters in those days means you're not established church, you're dissenting from the Church of Ireland. You're still a Protestant, you're a Presbyterian, but you're dissenting from the Catholic. So he was uniting all the Christians of Ireland, as it were.
Which pretty much was the whole island at the time.
Yeah, which was the whole island at the time. That rebellion failed ignominiously, like a lot of rebellions.
A brutal rebellion.
Full of spies, as usual. Things got very nasty. May 1798, they rose in Dublin. That was put down in June 1798. They rose here. The Presbyterians rose in Antrim, won a couple of battles at St. Field and Ballynahinch, but were quickly put down.
Ballynahinch, that was the main one,
and Michael's right. It's absolutely brutal what happened to people afterwards. The repression was awful. Even before that, there was a William Orr, 1795. Heard of William Orr?
I've heard of him. Yeah.
William Orr.
Tell me, I don't know much about him.
William Orr was hanged in 1795 for giving out a United Irishman oath in basically a show trial where the jury were bribed with alcohol and were all drunk, and sentenced William Orr to death, and he was hanged in Carrickfergus in 1795 and became one of the first Republican martyrs, Presbyterian, and one of, in fact, a lot of the guys who went into battle in 1798 used to have a little badge that said "Remember Orr." So yes, the first Republican martyr technically was a Presbyterian, and they were, they were very heavily organised with Protestants, and Presbyterians were involved. But again, down south, a lot of massacres happened.
Wexford and
Wexford, a lot of Protestants were killed by the United Irishmen, or those under the flag of the United Irishmen, because it all got a bit messy, as it usually does. So following the 1798 rebellion, that is probably to answer Michael's question.
Well, they definitely got reconciled with the Union. The Acts of Union came afterwards in 1800, coming to law in 1801. And like Presbyterians definitely became reconciled, and they saw a future within the Union very quickly afterwards. So there was I think within Presbyterianism they were less likely to be liberal orientated than they would have potentially been in the 1700s. By the mid 1850s, they were probably more conservative.
Well, in the 1700s as well, the Presbyterians, who a lot of whom had emigrated in the 1700s, went to America, started the American Revolution. They were heavily involved in that, and the French Revolution and the American Revolution were very influential in leading to 1798. That all French Revolution obviously went pear-shaped, shall we say, for a lot of people. So by the time of 1798, and after the aftermath of 1798, the Presbyterians were going, I don't think we want to do that again. I think So 3 years after 1798, we get the Act of Union, and most Protestants go, well, we're not being discriminated anymore from London.
No, they still disagreed with the establishment of the church, and they were happy to see it disestablished, in 1868, 69. But they got a lot more reconciled with their place within the Union, and they had more in common with Church of Ireland,
and they had economic benefits
as well. And Belfast, like if you look at Belfast population in 1800, like it's 30,000?
Yeah.
And it mushrooms to over 400,000 within a century. It's the fastest growing city in the UK in that period. So there's a lot of opportunities, a lot of businesses developed in Belfast, and a lot of Presbyterians at the forefront of many of those ventures. So they're doing well as well. So they're happy with their lot, should we say? By the time the kind of the Home Rule movement comes, and the next big advent for Irish independence happens, they're reconciled to the Union.
So to answer Michael's question, the idealism of a United Ireland movement bringing everybody together was kind of very sadly punctured in 1798. Then we get 1801, Act of Union, and most Protestants reconcile themselves to the fact, well, we're going to be better treated here, and we're going to benefit economically, and we're going to be better off. And then nationalism then gets identified with Catholicism. Through Daniel O'Connell and the Catholic tithe and all of that, and then unionism.
And a stronger Catholic Church, a more overt kind of legal Catholic Church from Cardinal Paul Cullen and all that kind of period as well. So
yes, the Catholic Church become more powerful, which doesn't help the cause of Irish nationalism.
Well, definitely uniting the Republican cause.
The Republican
Honor
cause.
Wolfson of uniting Catholic Protestant dissenter. Okay,
Michael, we've answered your question. That was comprehensive, I would say. Is that
I would have thought so.
Michael, if you have any other questions, feel free to send them in to us at the Irish History Boys. WhatsApp us or email at irishhistoryboys@gmail.com, or messages on 07483 313 842. That was pretty comprehensive. I enjoyed that. That was a romp through Irish history. I would describe that as.
We covered a lot today.
From 1798.
Not all modern Irish history, or from 50 or 100 years ago.
We can do anything. Sometimes I think I make this up the top of my head.
Do you? Why would you do that? I think you're using your A and A levels very usefully.
A and A level. We have to talk about the Young Ireland movement sometime, because that was what I did my topic on the A level. 1848. We'll get to that some stage.
I better do my research on that.
In the meantime, thanks for listening. See you next time.
See you next time.